Okay, and welcome back. So today's topic is about something called the Domain Name System, or DNS. So this is like one of these very, very handy things, and without this, the internet would be really kind of difficult to use. Okay, and here's what we're going to do. Okay, over here under Packet Tracer, and I'm not going to pause and get you to do any of these things, but as anything else, I always encourage you to try these as well, just so you've had a chance to experiment with them. So far, all that I've done is I've got one switch pulled out along with the PC, and I'm going to use the IP address 212.77.217.20, and that happens to be, well, look at this, it's a Class C network. I don't have any routers. I'm not going to worry about any of this thing, but that's all that I've got to have. Okay, so I'm going to put this away. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a brand new type of device that we haven't seen before. So here under End Devices, there's this thing here called generic. Well, unfortunately, that's all the word is. It says generic, but down at the bottom it says it's a server. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag one of these things out. So what on earth is a server? Well, a server, remember, is just a computer. It's a computer. Oh, sorry about that. I managed to get two of them. Okay, so a server is simply a computer with usually a lot of extra hardware and so on. Okay, so what does it look like? Well, it's physically, it looks like it's turned on its side. It still has a place to plug in a network. The power switch is here, that's fine. It's got a bunch of things. We're not really so much concerned about what goes on inside here. Uh, compared to a desktop computer, but it has a couple of extra things. So first of all, before I start anything, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to give this a label. Just give me a second here while I grab the correct label or the correct number. Let's give this the number 212.77.217.202. Okay, and I've picked that for a particular reason. Okay, and of course, since it is just a computer, well, it seems reasonable that I'd just be able to take this and I'd be able to plug it into the switch anywhere at all. And I should be able to come in here and I should be able to do some configuration. So desktop, and well, here's my IP config. Yeah, this doesn't look that much different. So 212.77.217.202. Okay, once again, Class C network. And I'm going to leave this default gateway alone once again because I simply don't need it for this exercise. Okay, so let everything fast forward. And one quick thing before we do anything else, let's just make sure we can actually ping the device, because if we can't ping the device, then it means that I've got some kind of a problem. Okay, so everything is going through. All right, so now what on earth do you use a server for? Well, you can use a server for doing a lot of things. Okay, most of the time, what you refer to the things that you can do on a server is actually called a service. Now, Cisco has set this up so it's pretty easy to get going. And you can see that there's a list of a bunch of services here. Now, what I'm really interested in is today this thing called the HTTP service. Okay, so right now we're going to use this thing called HTTP service. And of course, you recognize the word HTTP because, well, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, yes, this is the stuff about how you deal with the internet or the web. Okay, so this is the place where the browsers go off to. Now, if you take a look at this, you'll see that both HTTP and HTTPS are both switched on. If you really want to know the difference between this, this is really a topic for a course called CP3630, Web Server Management. We get into a lot of details about this. So this is the secure version, of course. Okay, and you'll see that there's a bunch of files down here. Like there's a file here called index.html. You can delete these, but I suggest you don't. But what I'll do is I'll click on edit, and you can see that this looks like it's some HTML file. So if you're taking CP 1520 or CR 1501, of course you've been through a bunch of this stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this for right now. It says, welcome to Cisco Packet Tracer, opening doors to new opportunities, mind wide open, blah, blah, blah. Just let me put this away. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything. But suffice to say that this HTTP service is currently switched on. Okay, so let's put this away and let's go back over to my PC. Okay, now so far, all that we've been doing is we just keep doing ping checks all the time. Can we ping one thing to another? Well, there's a bunch of things on the PC, including a web browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the web browser, and of course here you can ask for things. Well, I mean, Google knows everything. Can we ask for Google? www.google.com, and the answer is no. Unfortunately, Google does not exist inside Packet Tracer. Okay, but you know what does exist? The number 212.77.217.202, that happens to exist, and that says Cisco Packet Tracer, welcome to Cisco Packet Tracer, opening doors to new opportunities. Remember all of that stuff from before? Well, yeah, that's exactly what this is. Let me close up the browser, close up this PC, let me come over to my services for a second, and let me take this index.html and edit. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase all of the stuff. Now, here, you get away with a lot of stuff here because although it does support a little bit of HTML, I don't really care about this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a new message. It says, welcome to SIT, CNA-Qatar-edu.qa. Now, why on earth did I do this? Okay, user file name. Yes, of course, I want to overwrite this. Well, that's because this happens to be exactly the IP address of SIT CNA-Qatar-edu.qa. Okay, so you'll find out this in a little while. Later in this video, I'll actually get you to look up this number, and hopefully this actually matches. Now, I'm going to come back over to here, open up my web browser, and once again I'm going to go to 212.77.217.202, and I'm going to say go, and take a look at this. Now I can actually see my page, which is the welcome message to SIT. Oh, hey, can I put in a tilde followed by my 600 number? Well, if it was configured, sure, but this is currently not configured for this type of thing. So this is the only page I'm going to worry about, is just the one main landing page. Okay, but of course, you know already that you don't do this type of thing. You actually go to sitcna-qatar-edu.qa. But does this actually work? Well, let me close the browser and let me try sitcna-qatar-edu.qa. And I try to go there, and no, it doesn't give me anything. And that's because we've never done anything with these names yet. We've only ever dealt with numbers. We know the number for the server is 212.77.1.217.202, but we don't know anything about this name. Okay, so what do we do? Well, in order to support the concept of what's known as domain names, there's a few things that are required. Here's the first thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a brand new server. Now, this could be done in a few different ways, but I'm going to do this in this particular way. One of the services that I have access to on this computer is something called DNS services, and you can see right now that it's currently switched off. Now, before I switch this on, I've got a little bit of configuration I want to do. Here's the first thing I'm going to do. First of all, let's give myself an IP address, because I need to have an IP address, and I'm going to make it on the same network, of course, 77.217. I'm going to use the number 2. I could actually use anything at all, and I'm going to call this the DNS server. In fact, really what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this the CNAQ DNS server, and its IP address is 217.77.217 and 2. Let me go over here, let me configure everything. So 212.77.217.202. Okay, everything else is going to be left alone exactly as it is. Okay, and we'll put this away. Okay, second thing I'm going to do is, of course, I want to be able to wire this up, so let's wire up into the switch so that everything works. We'll fast forward some time, and final check before I go any further. Make sure that I can actually reach this machine, otherwise this whole thing is going to fail miserably. 212.77.217. Did I mistype something? I know you're probably looking at saying you mistyped it a few seconds ago. Okay, let me go back and see what I've done. Okay, 202. Really? I'm looking at this number, calling it 202. That would have caused a conflict, by the way. Okay, hopefully you caught that. I didn't, but now I fixed it, and that's exactly why you do your checks. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, good. This is actually working. Okay, so now what I'm going to do with this server down here is I'm going to use this one for the one purpose and the only purpose of serving up DNS. Now, what on earth does that mean, serving up DNS? Okay, first of all, this is not a web server, so I'm going to turn off this HTTP and also HTTPS, but I'm going to come down here to the DNS and I'm going to turn it on. Okay, now DNS configuration is actually pretty complex because it is very, very flexible. I will explain some of the things about what has to happen, but we won't go through the actual configuration. But I'm going to give you at least one small example. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to record something called an A record, and I'm going to put in the record called sitcna-qatar.edu.qa, and that's supposed to be the address 212.77.217.202. So you see, this is actually the address here. So I'm going to go ahead and say add. Okay, now, the reason why I do this is because, well, now what I'm doing is I'm training this DNS server so that it knows about different things. Okay, what are some other things? Well, we know that there's something called d2l.cna-qatar.edu.qa, and maybe it's a different address. So I'm going to have, say, 212.77.217.245. Okay, I don't actually have that computer yet, but I will in a few minutes. Okay. So, in fact, let's go and do this right now. So remember this, 245, I would tell you to remind me, but I'm going to forget, and you're not going to actually be able to tell me. All right, so let me have another web server, because it sounds like something very, very different. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this the D2L server. And let me mark this down. Let's see if I can remember the address I just wrote a second ago, 212.77.217.245, I think is what I just set it up to. Okay, we can check that under DNS right now. Sorry, wrong place. Check it under DNS. Okay, so 217.45. Okay, perfect. And while we're here, let's also plug this server into everything. Okay, and of course, we have to make sure that the configuration is also correct. So 212.77.217.245. Okay, and that's all that we're going to do. Okay, and once again, I am going to ping because I'm exceptionally paranoid that I have not made a mistake. Okay, 217.2. Yeah, and well, you can see exactly why I'm doing this because it looks like once again I have messed something up. What did I call it? A 202 again? 212.77, 217, 245. Okay, well, this looks like it's okay. Okay, this should be fine. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it just took a few seconds for it to get straightened out. Okay, so everything is fine. Okay, I'm just being paranoid. You see a couple of timeouts on the small network, and you start to think you've just misconfigured something because that's usually the mistake. Okay, so everything is now working. All right, good. So now I've got this DNS server, and I know about both of these addresses. Does this mean I can just come up here now and say sitcna-qatar.edu.qa and say go and... Ooh, that seems to be doing something. How about this other one, d2l.cna-qatar.edu.qa? Is that something different? And, well, what on earth is going on here? Okay, this is actually good, but kind of unexpected. I honestly was not expecting this to work, and I'm going to explain why. Okay, that's because I actually did not put something really important down here called the DNS server. Okay, really what I should have done is I should have put 212.77.217.2. That should have been here for the DNS server because that's what would allow everything to work. Okay, and now if you go off and you try to ping d2l.cna-qatar.edu.qa, it ends up going first of all to the DNS server and it tries to figure out the address of the next thing. Okay, so now, how on earth did this work without that setting? Okay, the reason why it ended up working is because it sent out a broadcast message asking everybody, hey, is there a DNS server somewhere? And it just ended up using it. Most of the time, this would end up not working. If you tried this on a computer at home or at any actual physical network, no, this would have ended up not working until I set up the network or the DNS server entry. Okay, so this is just one of these anomalies, I think, from Packet Tracer kind of helping us a little bit. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video for a couple of minutes because I want to add a couple of extra things to my network to make it a bit more interesting, and then I'm going to be back and I'll finish this up. Okay, and by the way, if you want to, like I've said before, I do encourage you to try this, but I won't make you submit this one. So sorry, just give me a couple minutes while I pause this video and I'll be right back. Okay, and welcome back to the continuation of our DNS. Okay, so I took a couple of minutes and I set up a couple of extra things outside of the college. So again, I've used a router here to give some other thing. Now, of course, usually what would be in the back end of a router is a whole pile of other routers like what you did in the network routing section. But this time I've added just one router and I've got some server that's hanging around out here. Okay, so imagine that you wanted to visit this particular server. Okay, well, the first thing is let's make sure that we can actually ping it. Okay, so I've already been in here. I know that everything is done, so at least I can ping it. And is it actually running a web server? Well, let me test it by doing 200.1.1.2 and hitting go, and yes, this is some kind of a supercourse. So maybe the name of the server is called Supercourse, www.supercourse.com. Okay, now here's the thing. You come in here, you can't really do anything with the words www.supercourse.com because it doesn't know anything about this. It says hostname unresolved. That's because we don't know anything about it. And there was no little tricks where I could broadcast out messages saying, hey, does somebody know about this, which is what kind of got me into some surprises in the other example a second ago. All right, so what would I have to do in order to be able to reach that server? Okay, well, somehow or another, I would need to have a DNS server. And well, look at this. I've got a DNS server right here. Could I just go to this DNS server and say, well, let's have something called supercourse.com, and that would be the number 200.1.1.2, and I could add this. Okay, all right, now that we've got this open, let's come in here and let's ask for www.supercourse.com and go, and sure enough, that we actually make it now. All right, so what happens, of course, is the IP configuration says, well, the DNS server lives at 212.77.217.2, and if somebody ever tries to put in a name rather than an IP address, I'll go here first, and this will tell me the IP address, then I'll open the connection to the actual server. Now, this is not really the way how the internet works, but it's at least sort of the beginning. Because imagine if this is the CNAQ DNS server. Who knows, or what would they actually feed into the CNAQ DNS server? Well, they would put in information about, say, SIT. Maybe about D2L, maybe about mail.cnaqatar.edu.qa, maybe about www.cnaqatar.edu.qa. But you can be guaranteed that they're not going to be putting in things for something called Supercourse because it isn't actually theirs. So this is a little bit of a lie about how things work. Usually things are set up so that this computer would still be set up to always ask this DNS server, but if this DNS server would probably not be configured to have these other entries like Supercourse, okay? But instead, this would be configured to have something known as a forwarder, and the forwarder would then hand off the request to somebody else. Maybe it's a server at Google, and if that server knows the answer, it would tell it. Otherwise, it would go and try to figure out who actually has the real information. Now, this is a bit more complicated than what I want to cover in this video. But if you read through here, you'll find out about these things called databases for things known as start of authority. Okay, certainly feel free to go off and look at this, but it's nothing I'm going to cover here in this particular video because it's a little bit beyond. DNS stuff, this is enough to take probably a few lectures, and that's only after you're comfortable with all the other things. So nothing that we're going to do here right now, but before I send you off, let me show you an actual DNS server about how they look, because things things here are rather simple because all I've got is these things called A records. I've got the start of authority, something called NS records and C names. What did they really look like in real life? Well, here's one right here. This is a DNS manager that I use for a course called CP3630 Web Server Management, and you can see what I've done is I've actually created a small domain called cp3630.cnaq. And if you go here, you'll see that I've got these A records for something called instructor1. So instructor1.cp3630.cnaq is actually the address 192.168.30.206. So it was some demonstration I'd used for a particular course. But now the interesting thing about what I've done here is on this main area called Win32, you can see I've got this thing called forwarders. All right, and what a forwarder is if this server doesn't know about something, it will forward it here. So what I do is I forward it to 172.17.2.61. That happens to be a DNS server here at the college. And of course, if the DNS server at the college doesn't know, it forwards it to somebody else. It probably forwards it to Ooredoo. From Ooredoo, if Ooredoo doesn't know, then it gets forwarded on to other people. Okay, it usually goes off to the root servers. Okay, you can see the word root here. Okay, anyway, that's all that I'm going to cover in here. So it's not about everything about DNS, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you that there are these things called DNS servers, and they're used for turning names into actual IP addresses. But I do have an exercise for you, so sorry if you thought it was just going to be sit back, watch this video. No, there's a little bit more involved. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to open up your command prompt, and I want you to try a couple of things. Okay, there's a very, very useful program built into Windows called NSLookup. And what it does is it will look up different IP addresses for different servers. For example, if you wanted to visit a site called www.mouse.com, you type in www.mouse.com and press enter, and it will come back with a number. Okay, and here it is. If you actually visited a site called mouse.com, then you'll end up going to a place which is 198.1.195.254. Okay. Now, what on earth does that actually look like? Well, I guess we better find out. I hope it's nothing bad. Hopefully it's just about computer mice, or maybe just mice in general. Okay, well, it doesn't seem to be very much. I guess maybe somebody could sell it. Okay, so at least it's not a bad site. That would be quite embarrassing. So good news that didn't happen. But that is actually using the DNS server. So which DNS server is it using? Well, actually, it's using a server called 192.168.1.2. That happens to be one of mine. Well, what if I didn't know the answer? Well, it actually got passed on to somebody else, and that's why it says non-authoritative answer. Okay, now we can try some other things. So I'm going to only do one extra thing, which is www.google.com, just to point something out. And you'll see it comes back with an answer, but notice it's given a whole bunch of IP addresses. Well, that's because Google is rather important, and what they've got is they've got a bunch of servers running so that if one goes down, for example, the 194.104 goes down, it means that I'll go to the 103 or possibly the 105, 106, 147, or 99. So I actually have my choice to go to any of these, and it's simply returning many things. Usually you'll find that the bigger places, the bigger companies have more than one of these. Okay, here's what I'm going to get you to do. I'll clear this out. It's from the previous exercise. Use NSLookup to find the IP address of the following. Okay, and upload this to D2L. So you can either upload a screenshot of it, or if you write it down on a piece of paper, you can upload a picture of the piece of paper. That's fine. All right, and here's the ones that I want you to find. www.microsoft.com. I want you to find sitcnaQatar.edu.qa. I want you to find www.cnaqatar.edu.qa. I want you to find something called registration.nro.qa. pretty sure that will end up working. I want you to find d2l.cnaqatar.edu.qa, and I want you to find mallofqatar.com.qa. Okay, so I want you to find all of these. It might take a couple screenshots because some of these servers will return more than one thing. Like especially Microsoft, I expect to be a little bit bigger, but other things may not be quite the same size. Okay, so that's all that I want you to submit today. I'm going to leave you with one food of thought. Let's take a look at sitcnaqataredu.qa. Okay, and there it is for my answer. Your answer, by the way, is not going to be the same. Okay, that is a topic for a different course. But depending on where you are, sometimes you get different IP addresses. Okay, why is that? It depends on where you happen to be. Remember that I'm inside the college recording this. You're not. Okay, all right, so that's all for this video. Okay, so luckily it wasn't a very difficult task. It's just to run this. Oh, and by the way, when you're finished, to leave NSLOOKUP, you just type the word exit and you're back out. Okay, all right, so here's your exercise for the day. Make sure to upload that to this week's Dropbox. Okay, see you next time.